Hi Booktube, I'm Zina and this is Beating Around the Books, and I'm doing my belated May reading wrap up today. So May was a bit of a weird reading month for me. Well, like in April, I listened to a lot of audiobooks, but I didn't actually finish a lot of physical books at all, even though we went to the UK and we were quarantining for a long time. But there was a lot of, I don't know, I was just distracted a lot and also very, very tired when I was there. So I couldn't really concentrate. But I did end up reading and listening mainly to 9 books. And yeah, let's just get to it. Oh, by the way, I got my new glasses finally adjusted. I don't know, they look very similar to the old ones. But I can finally see straight again because the old ones were super scratched. So I'm quite happy about that because I've been sitting here in quarantine in Germany and not being able to get them adjusted, so I couldn't wear them. Anyway, sorry. That's beside the point. Books. Okay, so the first one I finished in May was The Secret Lives of Church Ladies, which was an audiobook. Actually, if I don't say anything, it's going to be an audiobook. This is a lovely short story collection which centers around black women's voices. Well, they're all somehow to do with church and religion, and it explores sort of, themes of sexuality, Christianity, guilt, family, infidelity, that sort of thing. And I thought it was really, really great, and the audiobook was very, very good too. I think it was like a 4-star for me. It wasn't 100% perfect, but you know what short story collection is. And I particularly liked the How to Make Love to a Physicist, where a woman basically just describes how she meets this guy at a conference. And she's been single for a long time and she's quite guarded, I guess. And then I really liked Instructions for Married Christian Men, where a woman basically, has sex with a lot of married Christian men. And she leaves instructions for how to behave and what to do and what not to do. And it's quite funny and, how do you say, it's very dry. Anyway, really liked it. Audiobook narration was great, so have a look if you're interested. The next one was probably the highlight this month, and it was also an audiobook. It was the final revival of Opal and Nev. I had heard about it a few times, but I think I decided to give it a go when I saw Hannah at Let's Talk About Books Baby talk about it, because she just made it sound really, really good. So that's like a novel that's sort of in the form of an oral history or a documentary about this fictional rock duo, Opal and Nev, who are Opal is a black woman from the US, whereas Nev is sort of a British guy who's just, trying to become famous with his music. It's set in the 1970s, maybe 1960s and 70s, I'm not sure anymore. And it basically sort of follows their rise to fame, and then their dramatic breakup, and then their sort of reunion, which threatens to uncover certain secrets. The tragic accident, or that leads to them breaking up, is that in one of their gigs, wait, no, should I actually even tell you that? Maybe I shouldn't, it's a spoiler possibly. Anyway, so excuse me. And it's all told from the perspective of a journalist who is writing this, who's covering this reunion. And yeah, it explores sort of themes like racism, misogyny, it sort of weaves in historical facts, historical events into this fictional narrative, and does it really well, in my opinion. And I thought the characters were really well drawn. They were really three-dimensional, and I came to care deeply about them. And the audio book is fantastic. It's like a full cast audiobook, because there's a lot of different voices that we get to hear. You don't just hear Opal and Nev, you hear all sorts of people who are adjacent to it, like, her best friend, and then like some family members and the producers and all that sort of thing. So it's really good. And it's available on script. Actually, most of the audiobooks I've listened were on script. Not all of them, but most of them. Then I listened to Infinite Country by Patricia Engel. This was good, but it took me a while to get into it, because the narrative jumps around quite a lot, not only between characters but also between times. So there's a lot of sort of backstory covered in between. But once I did get into it, I really liked it. It was like very sort of a poetic portrayal of this Colombian family that is torn apart by, their status as undocumented immigrants, and, the sort of threat of deportation, or also deportation generally, and they are in these really precarious circumstances, really vulnerable, so they have to take on like really shitty working positions, and it gives a really good sort of insight into what undocumented immigrants to the US can go through in this sort of, hope for a better life. And it was really, I don't know, it just struck me as I don't know what I'm trying to say. One other thing that is important in the story is that it's not the whole family that is undocumented immigrants, because some of the children, they only get born when they're in the US, so they are American citizens, so they have this mixed status within the family. And it really struck me, I mean, obviously I'm already aware of this, but I guess the way that it was told, it's really just crazy, isn't it, how so much of your life is determined by the luck of the draw in terms of where you're born. It's got nothing to do with you. It's not any sort of achievement or whatever. You're just either lucky or unlucky. So yeah, that was really good. Then I finally finished Fake Accounts, which had started as a buddy read with Rainer from Rainier Reads, but he finished it quite a lot earlier than me, and I completely got put off, and I don't know, I just couldn't bring myself to pick it up again for a while. Not because I severely disliked it, but it was really a dense read, and it didn't really motivate me to go on, because I couldn't find myself caring about anyone. There was nobody likable, and I don't need a likable character, but I need an interesting one, and I didn't find the narrator of this one very interesting. The only thing I liked was her commentary on social media and the internet in general, and how it sort of shapes how people like me and you live our lives, or most of us anyway. But that was not enough to sustain a novel, in my opinion. So yeah, I found, I guess, the plot quite unsatisfying. There was one other thing I liked, but it's very personal to me why I liked it. She goes, the narrator goes and moves to Berlin for no particular reason, and she lives this sort of typical expat life, as I would call it, because I've known a lot of expats. I don't like that word, to be honest, expat, but that's a discussion for another time. And she doesn't try to engage with any of the local culture or the locals. She doesn't try to learn the language, and because she's got no interest in that. She just wants to be in Berlin and hang out and basically waste the time away. I don't know. And she describes this sort of, I guess, this scene of expats, and it's like quite, how do you say it? Yeah, she hits the nail on the head with that, from my experience anyway. And I know that not all people who, you know, immigrate anywhere are like that. I'm talking about specifically sort of affluent American and British and generally English speaking expats. Well, they're the only ones who call themselves expats as well. So anyway, I'm sorry. This is going to go off on a tangent if I don't rein myself in. Then, so I haven't given it any star ratings. I wouldn't know what on earth to give it. Then I read Yolk by Mary H.K. Choi, which I wasn't sure if I would like it in the beginning because it also features a rather unlikable character. But in this case, the unlikable character, you know, kept my attention, held my attention. So basically, this is a story about two sisters. The narrator is the younger sister. Her name is Jane, and her older sister is June. Jane is sort of a young fashion design student in New York who can barely hold it together. She doesn't have a lot of money. She lives in a terrible apartment. She also clearly has a problem in choosing good partners. Whereas her sister couldn't be any more different from her. She's this sort of A-type personality. She was, you know, an A student, got a full scholarship to some Ivy League uni that I can't remember what it's called. She's got this really successful job, high-paying job in finance. She lives in a really swanky apartment and all that, you know. So there's a lot of sort of resentment going on there. I haven't said, yeah, so they're both Korean Americans. But they still kind of keep in touch to an extent. And then this is not a spoiler, this happens really quick, really early on, and it may even be on the dust jacket or something. Her older sister finds out that she has, uterine cancer. And then it all goes from there. I'm not gonna try and like talk about everything. But it's a really great portrayal of the sort of, I guess, a bit of a fraught sibling relationship, which is still ultimately, you know, there's still a lot of love there, but it's just difficult. But also about the difficulties of, I guess, growing up as the child of an immigrant, and, you know, kind of trying and failing to fulfill the parents' expectations. And I guess in a way also this sort of, I don't think it's like named like that, but that's what it felt like for me. The way in how it seems to me sort of Asian parents, or maybe specifically mothers, express their love for their children in a very different way, and that can kind of cause these odd misperceptions, is that a word? Misperceptions, or skewed perceptions in a child that's growing up in a different culture where you're expecting something different, and how that can kind of also, you know, cause problems within these types of relationships. Anyway, I'm going on. It was good. It was, I think, a 4-star read. I really enjoyed it, even though the narrator was not likable. So really, that's not the problem. Although I started to like her a bit more towards the end. But yeah, she's a bit of a, you know, a mess, obviously. But yeah. Then I read my only proper disappointment of the month, which was Susanna Clarke's Piranesi. But I've already talked about that in my Booktube prize ranking video in the last one, so I'm not going to go into it. I'm just going to say it was a disappointment, but I will say Susanna Clarke can definitely write atmosphere. Like, that was really good. That's what drew me in, but I was just not not satisfied with how the plot was resolved, and it just seemed like a waste because of that. And then I read Real Life by Brandon Taylor, another Booktube Prize read, therefore won't be going into it that much. I said that in the other video as well, it was quite difficult to get into. I may have DNF'd it if it hadn't been on that reading list. But ultimately I did appreciate what he was trying to do, even if it didn't, like, you know, land perfectly. But yeah, I'd be interested to read more by him, definitely. Then oh yeah, this is like sorry, there's cats running about again. Then I listened to an audiobook which was a non-fiction. It was, oh god, it's got a very long title. Let me have a look if I've actually written it down somehow. Gentleman Jack, a biography of Anne Lister. Oh no, I haven't. Anne Lister, and then it says something like Regency landowner, secret diarist, and something else. I can't remember. It's by... Who is it by? I thought I'd written it down. I think it's Angela Steidele or something like that. And it's so funny because I realized after I finished it that apparently this had been written in German in the original, and I was listening to an English translation, which is a bit silly since I am German, but whatever. I think I never even thought to check, because I just thought anybody write a biography about Anne Lister is probably going to be English. But well, whatever. It was really interesting. It was quite fascinating to have this sort of insight into her thoughts, but of course she's not necessarily a very likable person. She's quite like self-obsessed and self-serving and very manipulative, and that's really sort of revealed in these letters, or not in the letters, but in the diary entries she talks about, and you know how she thinks about how she's going to seduce so and so a person, or blah blah blah, and you know, to try and appeal to this or to that. But it was certainly very interesting, and I thought it was really fascinating to see this sort of person, you know, who is lesbian, and who, you know, this is the wait, is it the I think it's the 18th century and the early 19th century, who is completely unashamed and feels no guilt whatsoever about her sexuality, and just, you know, if not fully openly, certainly, you know, lives it completely without guilt. Like, that was really interesting and fascinating. But yeah, that's it. I wouldn't say like it was an amazing biography. It was sort of middle of the road. It was just interesting because of the subject matter, I thought. And then the last one I read was Sarah Moss's Summer Water. It's been on my TBR for quite a while. I say read, I also listened to this. I read Ghost Wall, maybe 2 or 3 summers ago. Can't remember, maybe 2. I don't know when it was published, so it may, yeah, I think it was 2019. And I really enjoyed it at the time, but it hasn't aged so well in my memory. But I think Summer Water is much better. Like, I thought what was good about Ghost Wall, this sort of real tension and this sort of almost claustrophobic feeling within the book, was also in Summer Water. But I thought the characterization was so much better. So, sorry, I didn't talk about what it is. So it follows like a bunch of different people who are all in this holiday park in Scotland in like the most miserable week of the summer, you know, that you could have chosen to go on holiday. It's just raining all the time. There's absolutely nothing to do, and people are just sitting in their cabins watching the rain and watching the other people and sort of comment, you know, you're sort of you're following the sort of stream of consciousness of these individual people, and you hear from all sorts of different perspectives. You'll hear from like a young woman who's engaged to a man that, you know, and she's like thinking, well, they're trying to have sex and they're trying to have like a simultaneous orgasm, and she's just really distracted and thinks about all sorts of things because she feels like this is way too much pressure and whatever, and it's hilarious. Then you'll hear from like a grumpy teenage boy who just can't stand being, you know, cooped up with his family, and, you know, from an older man whose wife is quite infirm, and so, you know, all sorts of different perspectives. And I think she's really good at nailing their voice. Like, you can really tell the difference, and it doesn't feel wrong, or not wrong, forced. It doesn't feel forced. And yeah, I think if you like people watching and a bit of tension, where you kind of feel this sort of dread coming up, where you're like, something bad is going to happen, and you like good characterization, I think you would enjoy this. I utterly loved it. So so, like I said, Ghost Ball, I liked it in the beginning, didn't age so well, but with this one, to me, it felt like she's perfectly redeemed herself in my eyes. Like, really, really like her. I would definitely read another Sarah Moss book. And the audiobook is also really good, and it really adds to the atmosphere. But I'm sure if I read it, I would also have enjoyed it, because I read Ghost Wall, and that also played around with like accents, and, you know, how that sometimes demarcates different class, or obviously different geographical belonging, but it still came across on the page anyway, and so I'm sure the physical book would be just as good. But just to mention, the audiobook was really good. Yeah, that's all I've read in May. I mean, all I've finished anyway. And currently I'm reading Interior Chinatown still, which is a buddy read with Mark from Book Time with Elvis. He's already finished because he just raced through it, but I was reading several things at once, so couldn't do it. So far, I'm really liking it. I've chuckled quite often at the depiction of Asian stereotypes. Not because they're so funny, but because they're so, like, on the mark. And then I'm also reading The Transition Baby, which is a buddy read with Brian from Bookish, Mark Nash, and now Roz from Scally Dandling about the books. She's also joined us. And we've had a very, very long and lively discussion about during our first check-in, and we'll have the next one on Sunday. So it's definitely brought up a lot of discussion material, and it was really good, so I'm looking forward to the next one. Otherwise, I'm listening to A Still Life by, I've forgotten her name. Is it George? I can't remember. Well, I'm still in the middle of it because I'm taking it slow, because it's quite it's not an easy one. It's not because it's about her disability and her life with disability, and sort of trying to come to terms with the limitations that her body puts on her. She writes beautifully. It's really, really, it's beautiful, but of course it's a difficult topic, and I needed to take breaks in between. And then there's one other audiobook which I was listening to in between when I wanted to listen to something that wasn't as hard in terms of topics, and that I've just started it, and it's like what is the name of it? It's Fugitive Telemetry. It's like the fifth installment in Martha Wells's Murderbot Diaries series. It's this sort of sci-fi series about a sort of human bot construct that has hacked its governor module and is trying to deal with, you know, having choice. It's kind of fun, a fun romp, but it does actually every so often touch on like interesting questions as well. But yeah, I'll probably try and talk about it more in depth later down the line. I've only just started it. I just really like it. That's also on script. Like I said, most of these things were on script. I think Gentleman Jack wasn't. That was one of those half-credit purchases that I made. Anyway, that is it for now. Let me know what you thought of these books, especially if you have other opinions on Piranesi real life or fake accounts, because I feel like maybe I've been missing something. And I would love to hear your thoughts on it. Or any of the others, of course. Have you read them? Do you want to read them? Did you enjoy them? Whatever. Yeah. Thanks very much for watching, and have a lovely day, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye bye.